Today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Iowa. So I think that Iowa will have a good defense again this year, but their offense would have to get so much better than it was last year for them to have any chance at all of winning the Big Ten. Their offense was the worst in the country last year. It averaged only 14.3 points per game, which is horrible. And before they could even get to go back to the Big Ten championship, they would have to put an offense on the field that knows how to get a first down at least. Because now that divisions are gone in the Big Ten, uh, they would have to be one of the top two teams in the conference to get in the conference championship, and they're not going to do that with that horrible offense that wasn't even in existence, really. They had horrible quarterbacks, and it didn't even really matter uh, about the quarterbacks anyway because they didn't have any receivers that knew how to catch the football, and they weren't that good at running the ball either. Uh, and they did make a change at offensive coordinator, so we'll see if that helps them a little bit. Uh, but I still don't think their offense is going to be very good. Uh, and I do think their defense was really good last year, but I still think it was a little bit overrated because of the uh, the Big Ten West division that they played in not having any good offenses. They were all bad. Uh, and I think it was a bad thing that for Iowa that Caden Proctor transferred back to Alabama, not just because he won't be playing for them this fall, but I think it's a bad sign for their offense because that makes me think that he saw Iowa's offense in the practices and it looked just as bad as it was last season, so he didn't want to play for them. And then he transferred back to Alabama because the Caden Proctor didn't transfer to Iowa for no reason. He transferred there because that's where he's from. Um, and Iowa got shut out in both of their last two games of the season last year and got shut out three times last season. Uh, and so if they score anything in this season opener, uh, that'll be their first points in three games. And good news for them is they should score some uh, because they're playing Illinois State, an FCS team. They might even be able to score 20 on them. Uh, and then they play Iowa State, their in-state rival at home. I think this will be really tough for them. It always is because it's a rivalry, but I think Iowa is probably a little better than Iowa State overall. Uh, and then they play Troy, which should be uh, a fairly easy win, but not 100% sure win because Troy they're not Power Four, but uh, they're one of the better non-Power Four teams. And really on this schedule, Illinois State and Troy are the only games that I can say that Iowa's very likely going to win because Iowa's offense is so bad that mm, I don't really feel like they can for sure outscore any of these other opponents. And then they play Minnesota on the road. This will be a tough one. So Minnesota, I know wasn't very good last year, but they're usually not bad. And Minnesota actually beat Iowa last year, uh, and now it's on the road. And then they take a week off before playing Ohio State on the road. This isn't going to help them. There's no chance that Iowa will beat Ohio State. Ohio State's defense is even better than Iowa's is, and their offense is so much better than Iowa's. So I don't see Iowa even really being able to compete in this game. And then they play Washington. Uh, so last season, if these two teams would have played, there's no way Iowa could have kept up with Washington when they had Michael Penix and all those NFL wide receivers and that really good offensive line. Uh, but now they might be able to because of Iowa's defense. I don't think Washington uh, is going to be able to score anywhere near as easily as they were last year. Uh, so I think Iowa has a really good chance to win this one. And then they play Michigan State on the road. Uh, so Michigan State was terrible last year, and their offense was almost as bad as Iowa's was. If you take a look at the numbers, you'll see. And their defense wasn't anywhere near as good as Iowa's was. And Michigan State may be a little bit better this year, but I still don't think they're going to be very good. Right now, I don't at least. So I would like Iowa's chances in this one. And then they play Northwestern. I think they'll have a really good chance to win this one. Mm, but I think it's going to be tough and close, and probably not very many points scored in it. And then Wisconsin, the same thing as with Northwestern, except Wisconsin's probably a little bit better than Northwestern is. It'll be tough and close and low scoring, I think. Uh, mm, and then they play two road games in a row against UCLA and Maryland. But good news is they get a week off in between them, so that was a good time for their second week off. And these won't be easy games. Uh, UCLA and Maryland aren't mm, uh, horrible teams, I don't think, but they're still nowhere near a team like Ohio State is. So these are very winnable games for Iowa. Um, and then on Friday, they play Nebraska uh, mm, to end the season, and that's when this game is always played. Uh, and it'll probably be low scoring, and it'll be tough for Iowa to win. Uh, but like with uh, Washington and Northwestern and Wisconsin, I think Iowa will have a really good chance against Nebraska because all four of those games are home games for Iowa, so that worked out really well for them, uh, getting all of those at home. Uh, so now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. So if you want to see more about how I do these, you can watch my first one, Ohio State. But games in the green are games that are pretty much for sure wins for Iowa, where they'll be favored by a blowout at 20 or more points. And there's two of those, Illinois State and Troy. And games in the purple are games where I think Iowa will be favored by about a touchdown, 6 to 9 points, and there's one of those, Michigan State. And then uh, games in the pink are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a field goal, so 1 to 5 points, and that's most of their schedule. 7 games against Iowa State, Washington, Northwestern, Wisconsin, UCLA, Maryland, and Nebraska. And uh, games in the black are toss-up games, which means it's a game where there won't be a favorite, or there could end up being one, but there wouldn't be a clear favorite right now. And there's one of those, Minnesota. Uh, and then games in the red are games where I think Iowa will be a blowout underdog, 20 or more points, and there's one of those, Ohio State. Uh, so Iowa should be favored by like 30 points against Illinois State. Mm, and Troy, that's just barely in the green. I think Iowa will probably be favored by around 20. Uh, but it wouldn't be shocking if it was uh, mm, in the blue uh, when it comes time for that game, which games that are in the blue are games where I think Iowa would be favored by double digits, but not quite 20. Uh, and Michigan State, I think Iowa will probably be favored by about 6 in this game, but that's a tough one. Wouldn't be shocking if it was in the pink too, because it is a road game. Uh, mm, and Iowa State, mm, I think Iowa will probably be about a 3-point favorite against them, and uh, I think they'll probably be favored by about 3 against Washington, Northwestern, uh, Wisconsin, and uh, Nebraska because they're at home in all 5 of those games. But if they were road games, uh, Iowa State and Nebraska and Northwestern would be getting really close to being a toss-up, I think. And then if Washington and Wisconsin were road games, I think Iowa would probably be a really small underdog. And mm, uh, Minnesota, I've got that as a toss-up, uh, not just because it's a road game, but because they did beat Iowa last year. Uh, and Ohio State, I think uh, Iowa will be around a 20-point underdog in that game. Uh, so I see 11 games on here where Iowa will be favored. So that means they could have a really good season. But if their offense doesn't improve uh, quite a bit, I don't see them winning all 11 of those that they'll, or well, they'll be favored in 10 uh, mm, and maybe 11. But I don't see them winning all of those games that they'll be favored in if their offense doesn't improve by a lot. Uh, mm, so that will be it with this video, and please subscribe and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.